All right. Welcome to Telling the Tooth, the official mental dental podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Gross, and it's my pleasure to introduce a true innovator in the field of orthodontics and a leader who is transforming the way we approach treatment through cutting edge technology. Dr. Alfred C. Griffin III is the co founder and CEO of LightForce Orthodontics, the company behind the world's first and only fully customized 3D printed bracket system. With a background in biochemistry from the University of Virginia, Dr. Griffin went on to earn his DMD and PhD in craniofacial biology from the Medical University of South Carolina, followed by a master's in medical research and a certificate in orthodontics from the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. His passion for advancing orthodontic care led him to co-found LightForce in 2015 alongside Dr. Lou Schumann, with a vision to revolutionize treatment through advanced manufacturing and digital workflows. Beyond leading LightForce, Dr. Griffin continues to practice in the Boston area and serves as a lecturer in the Department of Developmental Biology at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. Today, he joins us to share his expertise on the future of orthodontics and the role of technology in enhancing patient care. Dr. Griffin, thank you so much for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine, Ryan. Being on your podcast is awesome. I love seeing orthodontists do innovative things and just tell the story of dentistry, and to see where this podcast has gone in your YouTube channel. It's incredible to see. Huge congratulations to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Well, I'd love to kind of jump in and talk a little bit about the origin story of LightForce, kind of how you came up with it, and if maybe there's a specific moment that sparked this big idea.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start by saying that I will get more credit than I deserve for this. So many orthodontists have talked about this, written about this, including our head of clinical affairs, Dr. Chris Jackson. What we're doing is not a brilliant idea. It's brilliant execution by an incredibly talented team. If you ask an orthodontist if you could have braces that fit the patient's anatomy and the exact treatment plan, would you be more efficient? I think that's comparable to asking a random person, is the sky blue? Um,
Yeah.
so it's a very obvious problem if you're an orthodontist.
Mm.
And if you're an engineer, it's a very challenging technical problem to operationalize. So I think that's been the reason this hasn't existed before, has been really a limitation in modern technology. We're waiting for technology on the software side and on the 3D printing side to catch up to this unique application.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say there was a particular gap in the orthodontic industry that you were filling with this idea and this innovation?
Yeah, if you're asking like what was the aha moment for me personally?
Yeah, yeah. Was there
Yeah,
an aha moment for you in
there
this journey?
there absolutely was. I remember the day and being in clinic, and I mean I uploaded every case that I got, every orthodontic patient I got in residency. It was my first year, my first few months, and my dad was an orthodontist, so I had a little bit of context. But I remember doing my first aligner patient. I was saying, "Oh man, this is awesome! Like I can see where all the teeth should come together. I can
Mm.
figure out what the torque is. For the dental students, that's the angulation of the teeth. I can see, what the Bolton discrepancies like. Is there a tooth size discrepancy? Are the teeth the right size? How hard should the teeth be contacting if it's a deep bite, open bite? What's the, jaw angulation? There's so many variables that are involved in getting that puzzle just right. And the beautiful thing about aligners that struck me initially was not the plastic. It was the digital treatment planning you got. And the thing that was so cool to me and frustrating at the same time, Ryan, is I can do this for my clear aligner patients. In my world, that's maybe 20% of my patients. The other 80% of my patients, primarily the teenagers, the patients that arguably need ortho the most,
Mhm.
they're getting braces.
Right.
And what was so frustrating to me was, because remember, I uploaded every case I had to aligner software,
Hmm.
just to see how does the
Yep.
puzzle come together. I couldn't
Absolutely.
export that into something that was for braces. And she's like, oh man, why does this not exist? Like, we would do such a better job. We'd be way more efficient if we could see that plan and
Right.
then turn it into something with braces. Because as you know, with analog braces, we're sticking them on where we think they go,
Hmm.
and then we're reacting every whatever 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks, versus starting with the end in mind, which is what I don't know about you, but every one of my instructors in residency said, you got to start with the end in mind, Alfred. Like, great, but I
Yes.
can only do that with my aligner cases. So, like, how do we do that with the braces cases? So
Hmm.
that's kind of where this came from. Again, not the first, definitely not the only person to think this way. Just the one that's crazy enough to try to do something about it with some brilliant colleagues. So,
Right, right. I think a little bit of thinking outside the box, a little bit of maybe craziness, as you call it, and a good team. I mean, those are recipes for some success right there. And I agree with you, Alfred. I think, as someone who does light force for all my braces patients now exclusively, it's been a game changer having that digital treatment plan, even in addition to seeing the end from the beginning, communicating with our referring dentists and being able to say, like, hey, we're going to do some upper tooth bonding. What do you think about this location? We haven't even put the brackets on yet, but you can let me know, like, what do you think about this and this? And that's a game changer too.
you're doing a great job at guessing our product roadmap, Ryan. I think that's really important. It's not all their date right now. Like, I expect like there's a continuing evolution of where dentistry is going and where LightForce is going as well.
Hmm.
But a very powerful thing that technology enables beyond like the actual LightForce product is the communication tool
Hmm.
with referring doctors. Like, it's analogous to using Google Docs versus old school Microsoft Word, where you can communicate asynchronously with people, not
Right.
just on documents, but also on like dental treatment plans.
Mm.
And kudos to you for like taking the screenshots, sending doing all that stuff. Like, um, there's a world where being on the cloud, while it's not easy from a technology perspective,
Hmm.
it is the right thing to do for the architecture wise for the future where the industry is going. Not just for other doctors, but also for patients and
Hmm.
patient engagement.
Yeah, and to that point too, like a lot of my aligner patients are asking, hey, can I have that to kind of track along with my progress? And so
Yeah.
it's a couple buttons away, and that can help too. So yeah, it just opens a door for clear communication, better expectations, just across the board for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Seeing is believing for patients.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, Alfred, could you share maybe a little bit more about your background story before we dive even deeper into LightForce technology and everything? Could you share a little bit about your educational background, your journey into orthodontics? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So both my parents are dentists. They met in dental school. My dad's an orthodontist, mom's a general dentist. And a while back, I was speaking to a med device analyst who heard that and appropriately referred to me as an inbred dentite. Um, so he thought that was funnier than I did at the time, but it's true. So, when you grow up in a world where your parents talk about teeth at the dinner table and your family vacations are to dental conferences because they're
Mm.
tax write-offs, like, you learn a lot about teeth, you learn a lot about the customers. So, that was my upbringing. And so, like, I thought, all right, great, I'll go to dental school, but I don't want to be a normal dentist. I want to do something different. So I
Mhm.
was like, all right, I'll do DMD PhD programs and ended up down at MUSC. I had a great time. Charleston, if you've ever been there, it's a fantastic town. I know it's a little further south than Chapel Hill, but check out King Street on a
Yeah.
Saturday. It's a great time. So the reason I went down there was again to do research, and I focus on bone biology, so skeletal biology and the molecular underpinnings of how does bone remodel, with the idea of all right, let's move teeth faster, pharmacology or pharmacologically. Like, how can we change physiology to move teeth faster?
Hmm.
And that was and the research I worked on went well. Went up to Harvard for ortho with the intent of working in a lab, going there to do research on this topic. So I knew what I wanted to do. Uh, Got there and then very quickly realized, we're onto something. Like, this works. We can move teeth faster. We had a mouse or a rat model, a recombinant VEGF that could work in intracrine and paracrine. It was, I'll spare the details, but it worked really well. We can move teeth faster. Challenge is it would cost about $500 million to get that to market going through a phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trial. And then even
Wow.
if you got it to market, I'll ask you, Ryan, like, would you be willing to inject your patients to save 3 months of treatment on one tooth?
Probably wouldn't go over so well. Probably wouldn't wouldn't go for that.
My guess is it wouldn't be a practice builder. Hey, come see
Yeah.
Ryan. He's gonna, be the only orthodontist in town that gives you injections.
That's the whole reason I went into orthodontics was not to stab people.
Exactly. Right. Avoid the blood and guts.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, realize that that's not going to work. Um,
Hmm.
even if you're right, you're wrong at the same time because the market adoption won't be there. So like being a scientist, you don't always think about like the market, the end case user. And so, um, I also got some great feedback from my dad saying like, yeah, great idea, cool, but if you really want to make an impact, will this make the impact? And so
Mhm.
it became pretty clear the way to influence efficiency of orthodontic treatment, which, by the way, reduces the burden uh, for patients to get orthodontic treatment. I mean, people forget it takes like on average 18 visits to get treated. Like that's a separate from the cost. That's a real burden to care.
Mhm.
It's like, how do
Yeah.
we address this situation at the same time helping orthodontists win? It's not pharmacologically, it's controlling the vectors of force applied to every tooth. And I
Mm.
didn't fully appreciate that until I had to do my boards cases and, make 8 bends in every upper and lower wire. And every visit, I'm like tweaking some bend by like a fraction of a millimeter.
Mhm.
That is, we say this all the time, that is not scalable. You can get
Mm.
great results by bending wire, but it's not scalable. And people say before, like Elon Musk will say, like, it's easy to build an electric car. It's 1,000 times harder to scale it and operationalize it.
Mm.
That's kind of how, or like, even like SpaceX, like going, they didn't invent space travel. They operationalized it because they come back,
Right.
catch them on the chopsticks. The same thing could actually be said of clear aligners. Like, did Align invent clear aligners?
No.
No. It's actually this guy, Dr. Kessling, back in 1946.
Mhm.
And back then they called it the positioner. Do you remember these?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Where they
Yeah.
just push one, use that retainer and just nudge it forward and.
Yeah, you nudge it forward. And they make them by cutting stone models and supergluing them in increments of millimeters
Mhm.
to move the teeth and then tell the patient. So that's the first aligner.
Yep.
Now, why is Dr. Kessling not a bajillionaire? It's
Scalable.
It's not scalable. Exactly. It's not
Yeah.
scalable. And so what Align really invented in 98 when they were founded is they scaled clear aligner production. And they did that by applying new technologies in 3D printing and CAD software.
Mm.
And that is arguably what LightForce is doing today to operationalize great outcomes with braces, is we're applying modern software on the CAD side and we're applying modern 3D printing and operationalize great results.
Mm.
It's not a new thing. It's braces, but it is a much better, efficient technology-enabled version of braces that
Mhm.
takes into account patient anatomy and um, for the first time for braces. And so today, Lightforce is actually the world's largest manufacturer of directly 3D printed medical devices by part volume.
Mm.
Um, so
Very cool.
uncharted territory, which brings pros and cons.
I'm sure. I'm sure. But congratulations on that. I mean, it's such a fantastic product and innovation. And maybe we could talk a little bit about the impact that you and I have seen in practice using this system. We've commented a little bit about it so far, but maybe we could touch more about, what some of the impacts that LightForce has on an orthodontic practice from workflow to patient management, everything in between.
I could probably ask you the same questions, but I'll give you mine.
Yeah, we could
Um,
both offer some thoughts, maybe.
yeah, we both offer some thoughts. I mean, I just simply said, like, every new technology requires some change on the part of a provider. And
Hmm.
for light force doctors, you really need to change three things. You just change how you think about, clinical. You need to learn how to move teeth on the screen with braces and, integrating bite turbos. There's some clinical things to learn. Then you need to change some things operationally. Like if you're just starting a patient out on a light nickel titanium wire for the first visit, do you need to see him back every 6 weeks? No. the wire's going to stay active. And I don't know, what do you typically do for your first wire changes with LightForce?
Yeah, we're usually starting with an 014 nickel titanium, and we might go 8, 10 weeks for that first check back and then advance to, 1818 or something of that
Awesome.
sort.
Yeah, that's what you should be doing. But that alone is a
Oh,
big
good.
paradigm shift for a lot of orthodontists, right? Like,
Sure.
in residency, I'm sure you never went 10 weeks. You would probably go like much shorter time.
Yes.
Um, but a big learning here was through COVID when we couldn't see patients for like 5 months. And then, the stock braces patients came back looking pretty rough. Teeth were in different positions and you're not sure what you were doing. The aligner patients came back looking pretty good because you started with the end in mind.
Mm.
And the LightForce patients came back looking really good because you started with the end in mind. So like that was really the aha moment. Like, why are we seeing patients back every 6 weeks? Like, if you really want to save visits, you can
Hmm.
save a ton, which leads to the third thing that you have to change how you think about is the economic side of your private practice or service organization, whatever it is. Um, there's, we say we influence the top line and the bottom line of a practice. The top line is like how you grow, and the bottom line is what you save. And I think the world gives us credit for the bottom line, and they're starting to give us credit for the top line by helping practices grow through better marketing, conversion percentage, things like that. The bottom line part is back to what I said. If you're seeing patients back in longer intervals and you're not doing wire bends, well, you're going to have fewer visits, and
Hmm.
so your profit per visit is going to go up. The other thing that's going to go up is the customer experience, the patient experience. If you are known in your region as the orthodontist that gets incredible outcomes, which I do, this is a personal conviction. I believe LightForce gets better outcomes than with stock braces because you're thinking with the end in mind.
Hmm.
We get into that in a bit
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But if you're known for that in your region by having great results and the best customer experience as measured by fewer visits, that's going to be a brand builder. And the
Hmm.
same thing if you're a general dentist or a hygienist listening to this podcast and you're thinking like, what matters to me? Like shorter treatment times are great for your patients too, for three main reasons, maybe four. One is shorter treatment times are correlated to things like fewer white spot lesions. It's the number one thing that's correlated to white spot lesions is treatment time.
Hmm.
Also, the number one thing correlated to root resorption, and the number one thing that's correlated to gingival dehiscence.
Hmm.
And the fourth thing I'll add is that if you're a general dentist listening to this and you refer out to a LightForce doctor, you're going to get that patient back sooner to do your procedure, whether that be an implant or whatever procedure that is requires pre-ortho.
Hmm.
So there's a value to everybody, and eventually, I know maybe for your referring doctor, you already share this stuff with them, but you'll see you have a deeper knowledge of the orthodontic plan. Which teeth, if the doctor is extracting teeth, where is that going to be? If there's going to be IPR, where? What kind of anterior coupling do you want? Are you going to give them great canine guidance? That the whole idea between collaborative care, multidisciplinary care is that you've got unique understanding from different views. You know the orthodontic language better than your referring dentist does, and they may be thinking more clearly about the restorative side. So the best thing for
Hmm.
patients is a clear view of what is going to happen and working well together. It's a
Right.
tough thing to get somebody on the phone and talk to them and coordinate that way versus like asynchronous communication, which has changed the tech world. I think that's absolutely going to be a theme in dentistry.
Yeah, that's huge, especially, thinking about the occlusion that you set someone up with. One dentist might be very specific about, hey, we want canine guidance or group function for this person. We want no anterior contact whatsoever. And you can really reassure them up front that that is the goal here, and here's what it will look like. And what you said, Alfred, too, I totally agree with about the better results and the improved predictability of everything. The level of control over the tooth movement is on a whole nother level compared to stock brackets. The ability to zoom in on that digital treatment plan
Yeah.
and be able to really compare marginal ridge heights and all of those things, you can definitely get a higher notch detail
Yeah.
than I think you can with the naked eye and with stock brackets.
I tell you, Rand, that's really the driving force for me. I did not start this company to, you know, have a certain title or do an IP, any of that stuff. Like I start to solve a problem. And just to understand the culture at LightForce a little bit, like we do an all hands with all 400 something people at LightForce every month. And we start with a doctor. We always have a doctor get on and share how they help someone and get an incredible outcome for a patient.
Hmm.
And the thing that I keep being amazed by, like one case that we're going to show at the next all hands, the doctor had an open bite case. And as you know, you can fix an open bite by extruding the lower or extruding the upper.
Hmm.
And if the patient's smile arc, is improved by upper incisor extrusion, you want to keep the lowers where they are and just extrude the uppers.
Exactly.
And it's really hard to control that with clear aligners, vertical control and anterior teeth. Um, but you get that with LightForce and it's dialed in and exactly. And then if it's an adult patient where maybe it's like a quarter cusp class 2, but you just don't want to mess it up, you can keep that passive and not change the posterior occlusion. So like all these little things, just these aren't things we anticipated. These are things our customers taught us about the product
Hmm.
that now we're like regurgitating to everybody else and saying like, no, this, we just learned this. Like one of our customers taught us this, do this. This is awesome. And
Hmm.
so it's just been this flywheel of innovation where you give orthodontists a new tool and they're the ones teaching us how to use it. And that's, the basis for this community that we have around digital orthodontics. It's been awesome.
Right, right. And it's funny too how I feel aligners and braces have kind of gone back and forth a little bit. When aligners first came out, I felt like there were so many things that you couldn't handle with them just because of the limits of the technology and the plastic and all of that. And so it's like, hey, for this relapse case or this mild crowding case, aligners can handle it. Anything else, we're going braces. And then I think maybe even a couple years ago, a decade ago, started to almost go the opposite way where, hey, we had this big anterior open bite case. It's probably surgical braces, or I think we can do this with aligners really well with posterior intrusion and all this other stuff. And almost, or like you mentioned, not wanting to mess up occlusion that's coupled well, maybe AP, it's a little off, but it's coupled well. We can lock those teeth and with aligners, not move them, and then control the things that we need to fix. And now I think it's going back the other way, right? With LightForce. Now we can do those locking things. We have better control over what we're moving and what we're not moving. Whereas when you put stock brackets on, everything starts moving.
Yeah.
So that's a big benefit right there.
It's definitely true. And a lot of times people ask, what is your share, if you're an orthodontist, what is your braces versus clear aligner share of chair? And I think it may shift a little bit back towards braces in a world where you can be digital but with braces. But I
Hmm.
think the right question to ask, Ryan, is not what share are you clear aligners versus braces, but what share are you digital versus analog? And I think our biggest competitor is not clear aligners. I think clear aligners are fantastic, actually.
Hmm.
Like they're a digital tool. They for the right patient, they're great. Like the thing my parents always told me growing up is always do the best thing for the patient, and the economics will follow. And I think that being in a small town, like your regional brand, your place in the community, like all those things, you bind goodwill every time you treat a patient really well.
Hmm.
So I would encourage that all your listeners like think with that mentality. That will
Yes.
elevate the brand, the global brand of dentistry as well.
Yes.
Um, but our biggest competitor is and the thing that doesn't serve our mission is analog treatment plants. And so, like, our mission is really to have a unique, enable the experts to create the unique bite and smile that every patient deserves. And that's uniquely done by a digital tool, whether it be LightForce or your clear aligner du jour.
Yes. Yes, for sure. That's a great message, and I definitely agree with that. I want to have an opportunity too to say some people might be listening to this and saying, "Hey, this sounds too good to be true." What might you say to either orthodontic residents or orthodontists who are hesitant to adopt 3D printed brackets?
Yeah, it's a great question. My advice to anybody, first of all, any new technology should provide value. No one should use LightForce because they're 3D printed. That's a party trick or novelty that provides no value. Like what should provide value is saving appointments, better patient experience, better outcomes, faster treatment, all those things. Those are the things you pay attention to. And then I would suggest everyone take the time to gain a deep knowledge of the technology and try it. Run the experiment. Um, in your hands, your practice. Everything we do is we try to make this technology super accessible to anybody. We're onboarding, education is there, but it may not, your practice may not be ready for it. Like sometimes, like just the inertia of change is too much. If you have other problems in your practice, you're not in a place where you should be introducing new changes until you solve the other problems. And we've seen that. Like we are the only braces company that knows when a bracket comes off, when and for what initial condition. And so what we've learned is so we follow the trends on like, which practices have higher bond success than others. And again, pattern recognition there has been such that when a practice has a strong leader as the doctor and they set operations and the very clear leadership with their team, what to do when, and they make those changes, things go incredibly well. When the doctor is not as active in managing the change, then that's when assistants don't do follow the recommendations, things don't go as smoothly, and you know that may not be the right time for that practice.
Right.
But like I said, there is new stuff to learn, and the deeper understanding you have of what you need to learn and what you need to change, the more prepared you'll be to make that decision. Is this the right thing for me right now or not?
Hmm.
Um, what holds a lot of people back, I'd say, is that they've mastered the past. Is that they are really good wire benders, and they've really harnessed a skill set that may not be as relevant in the future. So, or they may be not as great at learning new stuff. So, that's why I encourage everyone to learn, get a deeper understanding, not from LightForce, but talk to somebody that uses it.
Hmm.
Talk to Ryan. Talk to anyone who has experience using LightForce, and the changes that you need to make clinically, operationally, and economically as well, because it's not zero.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. And it can be scary to try something new, but it's been incredibly successful. The results are so encouraging. The treatment plans, I've never seen so many patients where I'm overestimating the amount of time I originally thought that it would take to treat this case. Usually we have this this thing in orthodontics where our concept of time is not always very accurate. We tell a patient, hey, it'll be 12 to 18 months, and it turns out to be 2+ years. And with LifeForce, it's often the opposite for me. If I was sticking to the original, hey, this will probably be 18 months or 24 months, and then we're finishing in 10 months or 14 months, I'm having to adjust my expectations a little bit. And so I think the onboarding process was very, very smooth for us. Like you said, to your point, our practice was in a place where we could adopt something new and try something that really matched the already digital workflow that we had with our aligner cases. And it just merged so fluidly with that. And it helped save us a lot of time chairside.
It's funny you say that. Like we do really well with practices that know clear aligners well and nailed that workflow. People that just love braces and don't do any aligners, like it's a harder change because they don't know the
Sure.
workflow is much more akin to the aligner workflow. But I'll say like you asked about like the challenges with change, and this is orthodontics is I firmly believe that dentistry orthodontics will go digital, and I don't even think that's a bold statement anymore. I think it's just like something everyone accepts, and it's like a matter of time. But there have been other like fields of medicine that have had massive change as a result of digital technology. Like one brief example is Da Vinci robot for surgery, and is robotic surgery, and that required a lot of change from physicians, healthcare, hospital systems. But today, if you go into surgery for some procedures and you don't have that there, like that is standard of care. It took some time to get there, like 10, 15 years, and there were some bumps in the road, like I think they might have had a couple of surgeries go wrong in the beginning. Fortunately, people survive most of our procedures, right, Ryan?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but there's change involved. So
Right. Yeah, fortunately, orthodontics is not life and death, but it can transform a life, absolutely.
absolutely,
Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the product and innovations that LightForce has been experiencing recently, maybe in the last year or so. If you could talk to some of the things that have been changing or developing,
yeah.
like that.
This is a big year for LightForce in terms of innovation. There's a lot of exciting things that, again, it's hard to anticipate everything at the beginning, but when you go to a digital world where customization is free, you can make a lot of changes that, unlock a lot of value for orthodontists. And so a lot of that coming. But I'll say some of the changes I'm very excited about is our ability to leverage the data we collect to improve product performance.
Hmm.
So, like I said, LightForce is the only company that collects that data that knows, if you had to reorder a bracket, we know that that bracket came off.
Right.
We encourage you to, and don't charge for it either. We want you to have all the tools you need to treat that case really well. But what that is taught us is what initial conditions lead to brackets coming off teeth, because that's something that diminishes the value prop. And I'll give you one example. If you're treating a patient that's between the age, say it's a boy between the age of 12 and 15, and it's a lower five, and it doesn't have an occlusal contact, what can you guess about that tooth?
It's probably still erupting.
It's probably still erupting. Exactly. Right. So what a year ago, we used to tell our staff or the staff for the doctors is who are bonding the case, like trial fit the tray because we sent them in segments with preloaded brackets and make sure it fits and that it doesn't rock.
Mm.
Well, that's a lot to ask of a clinical assistant for them to get right every time, and then to trim the tray if it is rocking and if there's erupting too. Like, so what we've learned is that like we can apply that knowledge and that data to custom segment the trays so that we can eliminate that decision that an assistant or whoever the bonder is needs to make. So we're removing decision fatigue from the process, and we're making the best decision for the patient based on data.
Hmm.
And you hear all the time, data is the new oil. I think data is going to be a very big story in not just ortho, but dentistry in general. Now, I think in ortho, it may have a slightly bigger impact because, like, if you're trying to fit a crown or an abutment, you're dealing with like one occlusal contact. In ortho, we're dealing with like contacts all across the mouth and being able to move them in all three planes of space.
Right.
Uh, so, like, there's a world where LightForce leverages data to give a custom product. There's also a world where now we're using data to improve product performance. And there's likely a world where eventually we use data to improve outcomes as well,
Mm.
working with the provider. So I think that's just a trend I think that's really cool. And a brief example of how it's had an impact is we've reduced the number of reorder brackets year over year by 42%.
Mm. Wow.
Massive impact from these changes.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alfred. I think there was some data that you were receiving that was basically saying lower premolars
Yeah.
were those brackets were and then you adjusted something and it reduced the breakages substantially. And so it's
Yeah.
cool that you can react in real time and fix problems with that data.
Yeah, that's and you're talking about tie wing breakage. That's exactly right. Like early on, we had some tie wing breakage more than we wanted, and we go back and look at the data. Like, why are people reordering brackets? They were checking, and we had tie wings coming off, and so go back to the original file and strengthen the tie wings. And then also there's some material science that drove some of that as well. But tie wing breakage has come down 92%. So we're very much a data-driven company,
Hmm.
and you cannot argue the slope of innovation. And so
Hmm.
that's why I'm very excited for the future.
Yeah, that's really great. Here's more of just a personal curiosity. Do you see Lightforce expanding into any new product lines beyond braces, or is it pretty set
It's a good
on the
question.
current product?
One of the challenges I still consider us a startup. We've made some incredible progress, but you need to always have extreme focus. And given that, I think the biggest opportunity in orthodontics to make a change is in the braces world. Because you think about it globally, 92% of cases are braces. Now it's around 75 to 80% in the US, but it's still like braces is the biggest opportunity. So we're not running out of market to go after. So our team at LightForce is very laser focused on making the best braces out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're when you have horse blinders on like that, you're going to have to ignore some opportunities that are low hanging fruit.
Sure,
But like
sure.
I said, like we want this to make sense for everybody, and we want the customer experience to be amazing,
Hmm.
where there's less to learn. Um, and things like Light Tray happen where you leverage data to remove decision fatigue. And then it's more accessible to people that don't have a high tolerance for learning new stuff. So like, the thing that rate limits a disruptive technology moving through a new sector is the new stuff people need to learn.
Mm.
And so when you can leverage technology to minimize that, you're just going to move faster. So we're very focused on braces.
Hmm. I think that's really great advice too for anyone with an entrepreneurial spirit that you have to know when to say no to something so you can say yes to the best thing, especially if you're laser focused and you have a clear mission.
Yeah.
Then you can't say yes to everything and stay focused on that mission. I think
Yeah.
that's good
We,
advice.
we, we use the analogy sometimes like, don't be a squirrel. Like, oh, there's a nut. Oh, there's a nut. Like, there's lots of things you could look at.
Right.
Horse blinders.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Well, you mentioned considering LightForce as a startup company. What challenges did you face when bringing LightForce to market, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, we were first coming to market. We launched a beta in Q4 of 2019, and we were just scaling up and hired our first salespeople in Q1 of 2020. But guess what happens in Q2 of or late Q1 2020? Like COVID happens, and like all of
Right.
our customers shut down. Revenue goes to zero, and we're fundraising. So,
Mm.
in early stages, there are a lot of these existential challenges that you come across. And, we were able to get it done and come back. And the demand after COVID was dramatic because the patient volume spiked. Like everyone was going to see an orthodontist because I think everyone's on Zoom or wearing masks so you couldn't see the braces. And it was like, all right, this is a great time to fix your smile. So, like, and then the other thing is that people saw the early LightForce cases coming back after not being seen for 5 months looking awesome. So they're like, all right, this works.
Right.
So we had massive demand, and then we ran into that challenge. I don't know if you've seen that old UPS commercial where like they get the small business gets the first order, they're excited, and then 10 like high fiving, 100 comes, they're still jumping up and down, and then you see 1,000, 10,000, a million, like oh, we're in trouble. We kind of had that moment as well, and so we had to open up a legal entity in Costa Rica to scale the digital operations for LightForce.
Mm.
Um, and that was a pretty challenging thing to do during COVID. But we had to do that to meet demand because at one point we had a 52-day lead time just to get a light plan done. I think again, this is a long time ago. This is back in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
But at that point we had to shut it down. We said we can't take new orders. And so I remember very vividly calling all of our customers and saying, that order you submitted, we can't process it. And by the way, here's your money back and another $350 to give to the patient because they were promised something they're not going to get. Like that was a real tough
Wow.
moment for us.
Hmm.
Um, but like our number one value at LightForce is trust. And I think, that was the right thing to do in that moment. Lucky to have a supportive board and investors who understood that we're here for the long term, not for
Hmm.
short-term wins. And that's, one of the benefits of being a private company is that you get to think have a longer term vision where you're not, just reporting to Wall Street quarter over quarter. You can think about what is the long term plan here,
Hmm.
and the long term plan always revolves around building trust with the orthodontic community and your customers.
Well, I'm glad you persisted through those low moments at the beginning as a light force user. I'm glad, that was a tough season to go through, especially with COVID. Didn't plan it that way, of course, but glad everything worked out. Hey, maybe we could talk a little bit about if there's anything new coming from Light Force. What's coming next? Do we have anything to look forward to in the future?
Yes, we do. Without going into specifics, there's a lot of opportunity in the braces world that are enabled by a digital ecosystem. And it's a combination of hardware, software, material science, and that's where our focus is right now. We earlier this year, pretty big change to enable lower friction in brackets coming out of January. Like one of the challenges with ceramic brackets is you have a little bit more friction,
Hmm.
and so we found a workaround to minimize that out of January, and much more coming this year. I'm gonna get in too much trouble with my team.
Well, great. I guess, Alfred, we're kind of wrapping up here. Maybe I'd love to know, just from your perspective as a CEO and an orthodontist, how do you balance all of this, right? Running a company, staying clinically involved, doing everything that you do. How do you strike a balance? Because that's something I hear a lot from my audience is just, they ask me how I do everything that I do. A lot of them are going through dental school and trying to balance everything. What are your tricks and tips there?
There's no tricks. I learn from people all the time. I read lots of books about this stuff too, but like I say, the thing that works the best is making sure everyone very clearly understands what you value, like what are core values, and then how to use them, and then what are your goals. So having extreme transparency on what your goals are for any given season and what you expect out of people. And then beyond that, hiring great people that can scale those things and scaling people that have different strengths than you. So like, when you think about building a team, which everyone listening to this podcast will ultimately probably have to do,
Hmm.
is, I'd recommend optimizing for a collection of strengths, not an absence of weaknesses. That's how you build a great team. A team that has unique strengths that don't overlap and then work well together. It's an awesome thing to see.
Hmm. I love that. And last question for you. If you could give yourself, your younger self, one piece of advice when you're just starting out, what would it be?
Keep doing what you love.
There you go.
Yeah,
You heard it
pretty
here,
simple.
folks. That's right. Got to do what you love. That's great. Well, Dr. Griffin, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation, getting to learn more about LightForce and what you do and how you're transforming orthodontics. If anyone wants to learn more or be in touch with your team or anybody, where can they find you? Where can they find out more about LightForce? All of that good stuff.
We are LightForce on Instagram and lf.co.
Awesome. And I'll leave links in the description for that information. But Alfred,
Awesome.
again, thank you so much for being here. It was an honor to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Ryan.